Tonight, our time in Washington, there's firstly been a protest rally, but that is also taking place at the same time as a joint session of Congress, which will certify Joe Biden's victory in the presidential election. So remember, there are electoral college votes, basically voting in line with what the different parts of the states said in terms of electoral outcomes. And then this is the lawmakers saying, yes, Joe Biden is president. And incredibly, U.S. current President Donald Trump, again saying today that he's the victim of electoral fraud, that he lost this election because of dubious measures by the Democrats. Of course, no court in the United States has confirmed that there is any evidence to support that at all. And this is, of course, the current Deputy President there. We're not sure exactly what's been said. Mike Pence looking at some of the documentation, but presumably he will be there presiding even as Joe Biden is a confirmed U.S. president. Well, Democrats are also poised to take control of the U.S. Senate after a special runoff election was called for Reverend Raphael Warnock, a Baptist minister who makes history as Georgia's first black senator. Fellow Democrat Jon Ossoff is leading in his race against the Republican incumbent David Perdue, with 98% of the results reporting. Now, a win for Ossoff, who has already declared victory, would give Democrats a 50-50 share of the seats in the upper house, with the incoming U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris providing a tiebreaker vote. These were the two Democratic nominees reacting to their big nights in Georgia.
We were told that we couldn't win this election, but tonight we proved that with hope, hard work, and the people by our side, anything is possible. May my story be an inspiration to some young person who is trying to grasp and grab hold of the American dream. And so, Georgia, I am honored by the faith that you have shown in me. And I promise you this tonight. I am going to the Senate to work for all of Georgia. No matter who you cast your vote for in this election, in this moment in American history, Washington has a choice to make. In fact, all of us have a choice to make. Will we continue to divide, distract, and dishonor one another? Or will we love our neighbors as we love ourselves? Will we play political games while real people suffer? Or will we win righteous fights together, standing shoulder to shoulder, for the good of Georgia, for the good of our country? Will we seek to destroy one another as enemies, or heed the call towards the common good, building together what Dr. King called the beloved community?
I want to thank the people of Georgia for participating in this election. Everybody who cast your ballot, everybody who put your faith and confidence in our democracy's capacity to deliver the representation that we deserve. Whether you were for me or against me, I'll be for you in the U.S. Senate. I will serve all the people of the state. I will give everything I've got to ensuring that Georgia's interests are represented in the U.S. Senate.
All right, we're about to speak to our correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Peace, but let's see if we can bring up those visuals of the joint sitting in the U.S. Congress declaring tonight that Joe Biden is the U.S. president, and there was clapping. That was when he was confirmed. I think some of those lawmakers now leaving these historic proceedings, basically saying what everybody knew: Joe Biden is president of the United States. But the incumbent president, Donald Trump, continues to deny that.
It's finished. It's finished.
And of course, history made in Georgia. So a very interesting political situation in the United States right now. Let's speak to our correspondent, Sherwin. Sherwin, so the Democrats continue to defy expectations in the Deep South. And let's just clarify, Georgia is also where Trump was saying that his victory was stolen. But Joe Biden's victory in the state of Georgia last November, that was the start. And tell us about the historic nature of these subsequent wins and the implications for the incoming Biden administration.
Allow me first, Francis, just to clarify, the process in Congress is just getting underway. They've not confirmed Joe Biden as the president-elect. What they have done is they've started the process of certification of the various states. So they're starting with the A's, and I believe there's been an objection to the state of Arizona, one of those swing states that traditionally go Republican but went Democrat in the election. And so what you have seen in terms of the members of Congress filing out of the chamber is the senators are leaving now to go and debate that objection for 2 hours on the Senate floor. And while the House of Representatives will debate that Arizona objection, then what happens is there will be a vote in both chambers as to whether that objection would be sustained. And what the objector requires is a simple majority. So in the Senate, 50 plus 1, a different number in the House. But if they do not achieve that simple majority, the objection is not sustained. The results then from Arizona will be affirmed by Congress, and then they move on to the next state. So we are in a process here that could take a number of hours. We expect perhaps 4 objections. If you think about the shenanigans around Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin, for example, some of the states that we might see objections to. Then the chamber separate. Senators debate, Republicans in the House and Democrats in the House debate. Then they vote, and then the process proceeds. So it's going to be a long day if there are a number of objections here. But you are correct. The implications of these, possibly 2 Senate wins, at least one confirmed in Raphael Warnock. He's the first black senator from the state of Georgia, of course, a pastor at the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, which is famous for where Martin Luther King Jr. was a pastor in the 1950s. Jon Ossoff could become the first Jewish senator from the state of Georgia and the youngest senator at 33 years old since, you guessed it, Joe Biden became a senator in the 1970s at the age of 30. So history in that sense. Also the first time that Georgia has voted blue since 1992, Joe Biden's famous 12,000 vote victory over President Trump last November. Of course, the black turnout was very, very important in key areas like Augusta and Savannah and Atlanta in Georgia. And Chuck Schumer is poised to become the first Jewish Senate majority leader and the first senator from the state of New York to hold that position. So certainly a lot of history being made. And of course, this really just opens up the administrative agenda for Joe Biden. The Senate, of course, has to weigh in on his cabinet appointments. The Democrats will now have a majority on his judicial appointments, all the way from the federal district court up to the Supreme Court. Democrats will now chair the committees and can launch investigations. So this just opens up new avenues for the incoming administration.
Yeah. So what happened? Because this was meant to be a close race. In fact, the 2 Republican incumbents were expected to prevail in those runoff elections. What are you hearing about some of the reasons as to why they struggled?
Well, I'll quote you Gabe Sterling, Francis. He is the elections chief within the Secretary of State's office in the state of Georgia. Gabe Sterling said this earlier today. It was an impressive feat for whomever did it to get 100,000 people to show up for a January election who did not show up in the November election. While Republicans were busy attacking the governor and my boss, the Democrats were out there knocking on doors. And the name Stacey Abrams continues to come up. Stacey Abrams is a former minority leader in the Georgia Democrat House legislature, and then later ran for the gubernatorial election in 2018, coming up short, did not concede the race, but talked a lot about voter suppression in the state of Georgia. She then immediately started the launch of a ground roots organization called Fair Fight. Essentially, what Fair Fight has done since 2018 is register people in the state of Georgia and beyond. And that is what you've seen here. You saw this in November where Joe Biden snuck the 12,000 vote lead against all expectations and really turning the 2 these Republican incumbent seats into Democratic wins. Of course, we're waiting for Ossoff to be confirmed, but the incoming vote that's outstanding is coming from a heavily Democratic-leaning county. So the trajectory is pretty clear. Stacey Abrams has had a very big impact, but Donald Trump casting aspersions on the electoral process in the state of Georgia also affected turnout, particularly from members of his own support.
And Sherman, thank you. You've explained for us tonight. We didn't have the sound on what's happening in Congress, so it could be a drawn-out process. But can we be clear that Joe Biden will be confirmed by the end of today as the U.S. president, even while Donald Trump is protesting again?
Absolutely. If this was an aircraft landing, and taxiing on the runway, it is essentially run out of legal runway in terms of objections here. You are going to see a political theater on the floor. You will see, as you saw, the members of Congress file out of the chamber. They will now debate the objection on Arizona. But unfortunately, Republicans just don't have the numbers in the Senate to sustain such an objection. And Democrats control the House of Representatives. So you can't get a simple majority plus one. So the legal avenues, the political showcase that you're going to see, that's all par for the course. And of course, outside the chambers of Congress, you have thousands of Donald Trump supporters that have gathered. There are various rallies in D.C. today, including the Save America rally, which the president spoke a short time ago. This is part of what he had to say.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats, which is what they're doing, and stolen by the fake news media. That's what they've done and what they're doing. We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about.
President, the election was not stolen. There's been no ballot rigging, no evidence of fraud. Over 60 cases in courts, including at the Supreme Court, have not upheld any of the objections from the president and his camp. So, I guess he can say what he likes.
All right, thank you very much, SABC News correspondent Sherwin Bryce Pease. And let's speak to Nick Harper, who's in Washington, D.C., and I think he's been watching that speech by U.S. President Donald Trump and engaging the mood for us. Nick Harper, all right, we are trying to get Nick Harper up on the line, but let me just clarify what's been going on. Supporters of the outgoing U.S. President Donald Trump gathering in Washington for a protest rally, that's what it's been called, ahead of the joint session that is now underway, although we saw the lawmakers leaving Congress, but to go and talk about that objection, and that will certify Joe Biden's victory in the presidential election. All right, Nick Harper with us in Washington, D.C. Nick, were you able to see that speech by U.S. President Donald Trump saying no concession when it's a stolen election? What else has he been saying?
That's right, yes. He laid out over quite a long time. It was a good 45, perhaps an hour-long speech from the president. It was many of the same themes that he's touched on over the last couple of months since he lost the election on November the 3rd. But yes, he did say that we will never give up, never concede. He said we would never concede when theft is involved, of course referring to what he feels has happened in this election, that it was fraudulently stolen from him. And then he went on to lay out what he calls was evidence of the fact that the vote had been rigged, that it had been stolen by the Democrats. He also said that third world country elections were more honest than what was happening in the United States. He would want to blame the fake news media, the big tech. He said both of those had helped to rig the election. And he said that it was very encouraging to see so many people out on the street. The estimation is that there are thousands out. He said that there could potentially be hundreds of thousands of people out here today. He said that they were all committed to what he called was honesty, the fact that they were here to show their support and carry and amplify his message that the election was stolen and that fraud was committed by the Democrats.
Well, tell us a bit more about the turnout. I mean, does it really show that Donald Trump has support, even though no authorities have accepted any of his claims about electoral fraud? And tell us a bit about the mood on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're completely right. There's been about 50 lawsuits put through the courts. Only one of them managed to make any progress. The Supreme Court has thrown out motions that he's put forward. All of the judges in those different courts around the land saying that quite simply there wasn't enough evidence being presented. But the people that are around me at the moment feel very differently. They feel that there is evidence, and evidence that perhaps has not been fully shown to the judges that would allow their president to win a second term in office. Many people out here today with flags, with Trump 2020 flags, but also banners saying stop the steal, the fact that they feel that this election was stolen from them. They are here really to try and say that they want things to change. They want this election result to be overturned. They don't feel that what we saw on November the 3rd, Joe Biden winning the election, was the true result. And they feel the true champion of the election was Donald Trump, and therefore he rightly deserves that second term in office. But legally speaking, the president has essentially run out of avenues. He's tried everything he could, even going to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, and all of them saying that he has no case to answer to, that there is not enough evidence, that they are essentially baseless claims.
Yeah. So short of trying to occupy the White House and not leave, I mean, what can he do? Did he suggest any measures that he could take, or just continue to claim electoral fraud? I mean, did you get any idea, Nick, today, whether the president will leave peacefully, I guess is the question?
Well, that is a very good question, because in exactly 2 weeks' time, he should now have left the White House. At this time in 2 weeks from now, Joe Biden will have been sworn in, and we would normally have that shot of the president climbing into his helicopter on the south lawn of the White House and flying away from the White House for the final time. It seems very unlikely that will happen. It's unclear whether President Trump will try to remain in the White House, try and occupy it as such illegally, or whether he just simply will leave quietly or go somewhere else in the United States, perhaps down to his residence in Mar-a-Lago. One thing that he did say during the course of his speech, an idea that he's pushed over the course of the last 24 hours on Twitter, is that Mike Pence, his vice president, he's overseeing the joint sessions of Congress that Sharon was speaking about just a moment ago. Mike Pence, he says, has the legal authority to throw out the vote, to hand the election to him. Now, according to the Constitution, that is not the case. Mike Pence's role is largely ceremonial. He doesn't have the ability to throw those votes out. But that, it seems to be what Donald Trump is now relying on. He said that he's hoping that Mike does the right thing and hands him a win in the election.
Thank you so much. Nick Harper, live for us from Washington, D.C.